Yeah, that's cult of the carpet. I can.
I love that. That's awesome.
That's my nerdy book.
So Doug's been using the trail a lot, John, and everybody loves it. He loves it. But I was reading into this a little bit about what is allowed right now. And I immediately called Doug up. I was like, I think I was up there with you. I think there's some bikers. So there are some bikers using it a little bit, but Doug wanted to be very clear. He wanted to say, they've been very respectful. They've been really nice about, they probably know that they're not technically just on there, but he's like, everybody's been great. It's been awesome. He loves the trail.
And what are the dogs like?
I'm not gonna mention the dogs.
Oh, okay.
They, of course they love it, you know, but Doug has his own rules. He does not follow council rules. I'll just put it that way. Don't look at me if he gets in
It's
trouble.
really hard to make sure the dogs that be up there, so.
Our dogs
They've been there.
are on
Yeah.
voice and buzzer command, so they will, he lets them off leash halfway up. And so far, so good, you know, they sit when they see a bike, so they
Yeah, so
sit,
that's not gonna,
huh?
you're gonna have to, like, that's not gonna fly when you start getting more and more.
You'll see, we'll see, you take it up with Doug, I don't, it's not my deal, sister, I don't manage.
You're like, that's not my
You're
ticket, my
police my
friend.
husband, yeah. I do police him
Yeah.
and I manage him, but he doesn't like it.
Not a
Let's put
problem.
it-
Oh, we're live streaming now?
Yeah.
Just so you know,
I'm sorry, what'd you say,
we're
Joe?
officially live.
Hey, I would like to welcome everybody to the Idaho Springs work session here for September 12th, 2022. And we're gonna get rolling here at 6:09. And first up on the agenda is the Virginia Canyon Mountain Park trail construction update. Gary, welcome.
Thanks. Been a while since I've been up here.
All right,
Good to see y'all in person.
we're anxious to hear what you have to say.
I'm not sure I was doing
Yeah,
that,
no, what-
but
I think John's gonna.
Oh, okay, sorry.
John may kick it off. I think I'm
Gary's
here.
in a
Alright,
supporting
alright.
role here.
I'm here as a.
Sorry, to put you on the spot.
We got John multitasking over here, so.
I'm sorry, council, let me just pull up my staff report.
But I got it handy if you want to.
Oh, if I could just step it, absolutely, thank you. So, Mayor and Council, there's two pieces of my staff report here, which you were looking at earlier. I gave you a little bit of background about the trails. Again, we were given money from CPW and GOCO in 2021 to construct the first phase of hiking and mountain biking trails in Virginia County Mountain Park. The first two segments of trail, which include uphill biking, technically, even though it's not currently allowed in the park, and hiking trail runs basically from the Argo Mill to the south to almost to Santa Fe Mine Road in the north. They're open to the public and they've been very well received this year. We've had good luck with them. One thing that Gary reminded me is that we need to have a work session in the very near future to name those trails. It's pretty critical that we actually get that done because this is part of the mapping work that we need to do. So I'd like to get that onto near a close work session. We have some ideas about how that might work. In June, we got another grant for $359,000 for phase 2 of trail construction. This money was intended to be matched by the $400,000 ticket advance that we got from the Argo team. We have not currently gotten those funds. We do have 2 years to complete that project. I also put in here just a note about the trail construction costs. As all these projects we've done in the city have gone, costs for that project have increased too. We're going to need to apply for more grants, which is basically what the staff report's about. We have been working with, just one more note about that GOCO grant. We've been working with their staff to figure out the best way to fund those trails with the match that we had promised. We had promised the $400,000, but GOCO is open to us spending somewhere between $40,000 and $90,000 so that we can move forward with construction. The big benefit of, well, there's two benefits to that. Number one is that we could actually construct the trails right now. And two, it reduces our reliance on that Argo advance to build these specific trails. If we do receive that advance in the future, we could use those for a future phase of trail development. We'll always have things like signage and trash cans and all those kinds of projects that need to happen in the trails. So all in all, I think for the most part, we have a path forward to build these trails that we've committed to building in our community. There is another grant opportunity that's available. It is one that we hit for the first phase of construction. It's called the Non-Motorized Trails Program. And it can be used to build future trail systems, or it can be used for basically construction, maintenance, and planning of trails. We're eligible for a $250,000 grant to build these next phase of trails, which is kind of, I think, Gary, the final phase we're considering for this time.
Depending on how the current phase rolls out.
Yeah.
to me, there's really kind of three projects that are left, the west downhill, the buttermilk area, and then what we call the eastern downhill. The western downhill is what the recently awarded GOCO money will cover. And then the match that we were gonna put with that would cover buttermilk. So that's where that project, kind of depends on when and if the Argo comes through with that advance. Does that allow buttermilk to get built? If it doesn't, then the CPW grant potentially could be that match in place of the Argo and just complete, if you want to consider that phase two, getting the western and the buttermilk areas done. And then we would have the eastern area to still figure out.
And if that is the case, where we have less reliance on the Argo money, that money was intended to be used for maintenance and capital upkeep of those trails, so it would just be used for the purposes intended. The $250,000 CPW grant has required match $62,500. However, that is in kind and cash. On the last grant, we spent $36,375 as cash match because of the work Comba and our other partners did to help us on the in-kind contributions. We have submitted reimbursement for that phase one project from both GOCO and CPW. We have a couple of notes from GOCO that we got today that we just need to tighten up on the reimbursement requests, and both of those will be closed out. So I did recommend, the other thing I wanted to know is that applying for a grant does not necessarily mean we take it. If we apply for a grant, it's due on the 4th, and we can turn that application in. And if we find that we don't want that money, we don't have to necessarily take it. So I did, I guess I recommended that we approve an application to CPW for a grant not to exceed $250,000, which is the maximum amount.
And it is good, sorry, it's not good practice to refuse a grant though, right?
We try really hard not to.
Okay.
We try really hard not to change what we tell people and that kind of thing too, because it's the relationship building part.
Right.
GOCO and CPW have been really good partners to the city in this whole VCANT process.
Yeah.
And they've done a lot for us, and I think they have as much incentive to have these trails completed the way we've talked about too, so.
Sure.
What are-
Sorry, no.
What are we doing as far as parking? Like, that is my concern moving forward with this, because that seems to me that's probably more city issues. How are we handling the parking moving forward?
It's going to stay the same for the moment. The Argo is dedicated 10 parking spaces, which has been enough for the need that has happened all summer, and we've been monitoring that. That's up on, not on the bench, but just below the bench where if you think about where the road bends there, when you're going up, it's directly below that on the east side of their property. I think that the development agreement allows for 20 spaces that are dedicated to the trails on Argo property. So that will be trail user trails, no matter what. And I think for the use that we've seen so far, that's been sufficient. But again, they're not, like to your point, I think is we haven't widely published them, and maybe they're not as regionally known as they will be in the future.
Do they have to
Are
be?
those marked? Are those parking
Yes,
spots
they're
marked?
dedicated to our use.
But I
And so-
mean, they're,
Yeah, they have
with
big
signage?
signboards up there.
But
Now-
what do we do when they do overflow into the neighborhood, John? I'm
Well,
sure everybody's.
I think
like
what-
to answer the question. That's-
There is another work session we're gonna have to talk about parking in the near future. I think one of the good things about our parking program is it's flexible, as we've all kind of played with. And I think we're gonna have to just make sure that we remember that as we add amenities, we may add users, and we just keep a good track on those users. We don't want people going up on Wall Street or Virginia or anything like that. I think we need to do a pretty comprehensive signage plan in the city, and we've been talking about that. We have, I don't want to call it sign pollution, but we have so many signs, sometimes people are blind to them. I'd like to formalize those a little bit and make them a little bit easier to read so that our residents and our visitors know a little bit easier where they should be going. And one of the things I have, a simple idea, is I'd like to change our paid parking sign to blue. I think it's a little bit more universally known as a parking color. And I think we can do that. I think Riverside Drive, we're gonna need to make sure we improve the signage there, which is something that I think is it's a goal that we all know we need to accomplish, but I think the problem always turns into like, where do we put the posts? And so there's some of that work that needs to get done. And I think that we need to get that kind of tackled. I think we can do that this fall, so that next spring, as we open this next phase of trails, hopefully we can make sure everything is, we're keeping ahead of the problem. We were talking about this grant this staff report didn't specifically ask, but we're going to need to put out an RFP for that trail construction. We haven't yet because we're waiting to figure out what this grant match situation will be with GOCO. once we know that, we'll probably have to have one more work session to approve that RFP for that work once those conversations are finalized. And then that'll give us an idea about when those downhill trails will be constructed. Currently, there probably are mountain bikers up there, but one of the problems is there's no way down once you're up without having conflict with hikers.
Oh, they were definitely coming
Yeah,
down when we were,
that's
when we were
something we
going
need
up.
to make sure we.
Again, they were fine, but I don't think that's gonna be the case for every single one of them. And I don't think it's gonna be a problem for the rest of the year, because the year is kind of closing out. But coming into next year, the word of mouth is gonna start picking up, especially when the new trails are being talked about. What, I mean, you already know what my concern is. This is a personal thing. But it also is gonna be, it's gonna be Sunnyside wide, where the problem's gonna affect, and I think Riverside and Virginia are gonna take the brunt of it, really, to be honest with you. I just wanna make sure that at that point in time, we really do have the parking people coming up and making sure that residents are also not being impacted, and that it's not just on Colorado Boulevard that we're looking for people illegally parking.
Yep.
There's a particular corner Lisa's very familiar with, where one weekend it was 7 cars from out of state surrounding a resident's house, and they had nowhere to park. So,
We'll need to make sure we address that before those trails open. And I think that we have some possibilities. I think we have another work session coming to talk about parking issues. And this is part of the conversation about why we want to make some changes. So I think it ultimately comes down to we need to stay ahead of people. And I think signage is a big part of that, is what, and making sure, like you said, the ambassadors are available. But I think we've had some good staff level conversations that are ready to come to city council to discuss that.
Have you been able to track the usage of the trail so far?
Very qualitatively, it's difficult. We could put a trail counter up there, and that's something that I'd like to think about doing if we could, but just cost of that. But I think we've seen several, that it's frequently used by people in town. It's been discussed on social media fairly with good terms, like we've heard here. Sunsets up there are great. On the 4th of July, I know there's people up there watching fireworks because it's very easy to see them right there. So I think we've had our intention was to have a good community opening of the trails, and I think we've done that. And that gets the naming the trails so that we can get them into the mapping systems correctly and put some descriptions about the trail and say, hey, this use isn't allowed or whatever. So we can kind of start controlling the traffic a little bit.
Another thing that I was thinking about is if you could put a sign up or something and ask for donations for trail maintenance, something like that,
Yes.
but I don't know how you put a post in the ground and make it secure.
they have
But with
those ones
today's technology, could you create an app
Venmo.
where people give $1
Yep.
You could
towards trail maintenance?
Here's the
Because
QR code.
a lot of people are willing to give up $1 or $2
Yeah, we could do a QR code.
because they're using the trail and
That's a
say,
good
I'm
idea.
using the trail, I'll give $1 towards trail maintenance.
I like it.
agree.
I like that.
We
Yeah,
could
I
even,
think
one
it's
thing,
very,
sorry.
well, it's new and innovative.
Coma's done a lot of work in this area, and they've been really good partners with the city, and they're doing more trail maintenance. We could even, this could be part of our partnership with Coma moving forward, is like, let's sponsor their efforts. They also do, one other thing Coma does that's really cool is they have volunteer efforts for the people who use the trails. And that's one thing that the mountain bike community does really well, is they get together to fix stuff when it breaks. So I think that this is another opportunity, maybe.
True volunteers.
Yeah, work with our team there. I don't know how you feel about being voluntold for that, but I think that it could be cool.
Well, and
Well, I
told is a
like
big
the
deal.
idea though that we're addressing this, trying to get ahead of some of the challenges that we see, because I agree with you that the community has been really receptive to it. I'd hate for the community to become less receptive.
Yeah.
As the popularity of this grows outside of our community.
We will make sure that we have good management strategies in place. And I think one of the questions is when do those trails open? And one of the things we've talked about a little bit informally is there's a couple of different kinds of bike races that happen in trails like this. One's called an enduro, which is basically a more marathon oriented bike race is a good way to think about it. But there's other kinds of bike races that can happen up there too. And I think that if we actively program our space occasionally, and we really make sure that people understand the expectations when they're here, we're going to have better experiences long-term on this trail system. I think at Maryland Mountain, which is in Black Hawk, and Floyd Hill, we've had really respectful communities using those trails as far as I have seen all summer, and I'm kind of not active in those communities now, but I'm watching what's happening. And I think that we need to just make sure that we encourage positive interactions in those spaces. And in using the community, respecting where parking is and all that.
Yes, well, can I also add, and I saw this, and you may have seen this too, somewhere on social media, it's a slight off topic, but I think we need to start, creating a website and a QR code or something that says, here's what you can do in Idaho Springs. So it's another way to actively communicate. Here's what here's what we have for you. Here's what you can do. Here's what we would prefer you not do.
Okay,
Like I don't know where I saw that. I was floating around one of the community groups and there was I'll find it and send you the link because there was a sort of a thing. And I'm like, we need to update that so that it's something that people can access.
yeah. We have very many parking resources that don't impact people close to the camp, where for people who are riding bikes, they're probably not gonna be impacted that heavily. There's, I think, about 600 spaces on Colorado Boulevard that could be utilized without housing impacts. Just in the parking the city's created. And then there's, of course, the parking by the glass blowing shop, which is city owned. And there's a couple other places like that where some of this overflow use could go. And one of the things that in a parking world that goes along to what you're saying, that we need to do a better job at is making sure that people go to the resources we want. Sometimes I think in Idaho Springs, we think about people coming to one place, but they're not coming to one place. They're coming to Idaho Springs. And I say this like not because of it's like that place, but like when you go to Disney World, it's a controlled experience, like where you throw your trash, where you park, where you go, how you go, all those things. And I think we could build on some of those successes to protect the residential quality of life where we need it protected and to make sure people have a really good time when they're here. So I think I agree with you.
I like that. I like that vision.
All right, anything more on Virginia Canyon Mountain Bike Park?
So if I may, there are really two items we'd like some direction from council on. One is okay to go ahead and apply for phase 3 grant from CPW trail construction. That's a $250,000 grant. And what's the cash match on that? If we get the 250.
It's cash in kind of 62,000.
Yeah.
500.
So our cash match would be somewhat less than that.
Yeah, I would think, Gary, it's probably fair to say would be similar to what we were last
Probably
year.
similar, yeah, I didn't look at exactly what.
30 some odd thousand,
That
yeah.
tends to shape up pretty simple.
Yeah. So everybody okay moving forward with that?
What was the reason you said that we might put a grant in and then not accept it? Is because we wouldn't want to match?
No, so with the Argo money being the way it is, there could be a situation where our funding position changes on the city side.
Okay.
And so that could mean that just from a strategy standpoint, we might want to think about things a little bit. But I kind of think having this grant would probably be helpful either way. So I think that's probably, I don't know if you have a different thought.
Well, unless the Argo comes through with more than the agreement calls for, you're gonna need the 250 to finish the trail system.
Yeah. And that's a lot of bang for the buck. I mean, even if we paid the 62 and got $250,000, that's a heck of a, yeah, that's a heck of a good shape.
Depends on the makeup of the council, but I'm all for it.
No, I agree. Give me that stink eye.
No, I mean, we don't know who's on council, how they feel about putting money into things like this and
What do you mean, in the future?
in the future.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully we'll have young
This will
people on
be done
council someday.
before this council changes, right?
We need some young people.
All right, so everybody's okay with moving forward with the 250 grant?
Yes.
All right. And I'm sorry, Andy,
And
the
then
second one?
the other item is we've received this grant from GOCO. It's $359,000. And we'd like to start construction this fall of phase 2 with that grant. And GOCO wants to see the money spent. But we were hoping when we applied, and we told GOCO that we were expecting by then to have this $400,000 advance from Argo. Of course, we don't have that now. We don't know when we will have it. Argo got some good news about their the fraud claim being validated in the courts. So that's good news, but that doesn't mean, we don't know what that means for the overall project and financing and all of that. So I think staff's preference is that we would have direction from council to move forward, but we're not going to be able to build as many trails with it because we'll have the GOCO grant. And then the other piece of it is we need to have the city agree to provide the match, which is between
Yeah, this is what I was saying.
40 and 90.
We might possibly want to come back to another work session or bring this in a staff report.
Yeah, so we have the numbers.
We'll know relatively soon, Gary, like what GOCO is okay with us matching.
We have a pretty good idea what that range is. It would
40
be
to 90.
between 40 to 90. And that's only vague because the program is a little vague on what their requirements are. It's typically only a 10% cash match. So on 359, you're less than 40. So really, overall, like John said, you've got 2 years to complete this program based on this grant that was just awarded. What staff is looking for is just the understanding that if we move forward and we spend 359 on building the West Downhill Trail and the Argo falls through, there's got to be still that minimum requirement in that 40 to 90 range, probably closer to the lower end of that. That would have to come from somewhere. But we're going to be continuing. I applied for 2 other grants late spring that didn't come through. So we're still going to be plugging away at different funding sources, pitching this to other corporate partners. There's other ways that match may come if it's not with the Argo. So it's just sort of having that understanding that as we wade in, we're not entirely certain what the match mechanism is going to be,
So
whether
between
that's
these
going to come
two-
from the city coffers or from Argo or other partners.
Anywhere from like 70 to 120 between.
In that range.
Yeah,
So, and I think we'll probably have an idea from GoCo relatively soon what they would accept, right, for the match.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're gonna get a hard answer on that, other than we're keeping them apprised that what was put forward in the application and the budget is not yet solidified. They're aware of that. And so it's just a matter of keeping them apprised of our progress, the fact that we're moving forward and still, working on exactly how the city will fund its portion of that obligation.
We've been trying to be good stewards of that grant resource too. And also to be true to as much as possible is what we said and matching the way we could. So there's still a possibility that everything's the same. It just, I think would benefit everything if we had at least one of those downhill trails built, because it would allow for the circular movement of bikes,
Right.
which is better.
Gary, would there really, I don't see a downside to recommending to council that we move forward. But we wanted to make sure the council understood that if the Argo never happens.
Right.
We would need to provide the match for the grant we received.
The city would be on the hook for, a minimum of 40K.
Or you have some funding, outside funding.
Or we find some other funding.
Right, I'm just saying that you hold the obligation
Yeah,
for
so
that
they'll be
grant.
obligation that
Right,
we might be able to get some funding for.
Right, but there are still many mechanisms for how forces outside of the city's coffers could help pull that together.
Yeah, and I think we could do the 40 one way or another. I realize there are many competing interests for this, but I want to say we have something like $87,000 set aside that has to be used for park and recreation from the lottery funds.
Right.
So again, there's other competing interests for that, but I mean, in a pinch, we could make good on the deal.
I also think this has gone so well with residents, like I don't see a problem saying, even to a future council, hey, there's a reason why we committed to this. This is, it's a commitment, but also our residents have been happy with this as one of the things that we
Towards
provide.
recreation in our community.
As long as
It's a
it's,
great cause.
and as long as it doesn't get to the point where residents feel like they're pushed out of it because it
Yeah.
has a very, very large draw for the Front Range,
Right.
then that would be a problem for residents and us spending money on what would they consider not an Idaho Springs
Yes.
recreation any longer. So, and it has happened in the past, so it's definitely something that needs to be considered. Not that I'm saying I'm against it, I'm not, but I'm,
No,
The impact of that uphill trail should be minimal when you start bringing in additional. That was part of the way that system was designed. So that you're not having those bikes coming downhill at you, which is a much bigger imposition on your hiking day. When the bikes are only going uphill because they have a much more fun and suitable way downhill, and you build in that circulation, that's part of what John was
Right.
talking about. We've seen that at Floyd Hill, we've
that's
seen it
smart,
at
too.
Black Hawk. We can build in that natural circulation that doesn't rely on police and signs and things. People just do what's right.
right, I've been on the
Everywhere.
trails that you're talking about in Black Hawk. I was out there when
Okay.
there was no trails in Black Hawk, and I enjoyed it probably a
Did
lot
you-
more,
did you?
but the
Yeah.
bikers are keeping to their designated areas mostly. Yeah, it's a beautiful area.
All right, so anything more on Virginia Canyon? Okay.
So,
Our
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the direction. So, I think what I'm hearing is that we can go ahead and move forward with an RFP for phase 2 with the GoCo grant we have and then with
That
we're
may
still
cost 40,000 to 90,000.
correct. There's still that risk exposure,
Yes.
if you will, to the city, but we are matching this grant. It enables us to use this grant, build a downhill hiking trail, which will improve the circulation, reduce the conflicts on the hiking trail. And the hope is that at some point in the near future, that $400,000 advance will come through.
And help
And
us.
we can integrate that into our project,
Sure.
either at phase 2 or at phase 3. Is that? all
And
sound
we're
good?
applying for the other grant that has
And we're applying for the other-
62,000
right,
cash
yes.
in kind.
And that grant has to be written by the 4th, you said? And then how long does it take when they decide on?
There's a,
Forever.
yeah,
We find out like March, April,
yeah.
Okay.
and then the money is actually funded, closer to May or so. It's a really long cycle with CPW.
Gotcha.
All right, thank you. So we will move on to the projects update, and I just want to make one quick comment. You don't realize how many different projects we are on, and I'm also happy to say have successfully completed.
Mhm.
It's really quite a list. But Jonathan, please kick us off.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Since we are running a little tight on time,
Yeah.
maybe do item 3 first,
Oh, sure.
and then whatever time's left, we can talk about projects, because a lot of it's self-explanatory, and we can always talk about it more as we move through the budget process.
You bet.
Okay.
I realize this is a very sensitive subject. But what I'm talking about here is mayor and council stipends. It has been so long since there has been an increase, no one even knows how long this has been. I will tell you, when I was on council, I felt, 3-4 hours maybe, and we were getting, it's $4,800, so it's about $100. And it wasn't too awful far off the mark, it's gotta be 20, 25 an hour. Mostly looking for folks who are just dedicated, to the city and are willing to set aside their Mondays. But it's been many, many years. And we are in a time probably of near, 8-10% inflation. So I'm saying this is something for a few years out, but we can address it now so that folks who run in the future will have an increase. And I will say, and I am absolutely not complaining, but I want you to know the mayor position, it isn't double the time or triple the time. It is many, many, many.
You do a lot of
times.
more, you do a lot of meetings. You do a lot more.
There are, today will be an 8-hour day. There are times I go to Denver Regional Council of Governments and get home at 9 o'clock. And there are folks that you really need to meet with that have, some issues that they would like to discuss. And I'm merely saying that you will get nothing else done. I mean, this, it isn't just a couple hour day kind of a thing. And I took a look at Breckenridge. It's a similar kind of a tourism community. A couple of years ago when they did their compensation, they were at 2,200 people. And I found it very interesting, even today, they have a GDP of 29,000 and change per person. We're at like 50,000. I never would have thought we were almost double what Breckenridge is. So I'm saying our people, all of our citizens, there's just a lot of output. We have a lot of things going on in the city. A couple of years ago, they had the mayors at $18,000, which I can guarantee is even minimum wage for this position.
Right.
But they also have the mayor on the health plan, as do several other cities, and I believe I can tell you why. If someone were a business person, they could step away from their business, or if they worked just for a company, they wouldn't have to worry about losing their health coverage because they're mayor. This would enable anyone, maybe even with a part-time job, to be our mayor. And I think anybody should be able to be our mayor. I think that you don't want a situation where it's got to be an egomaniac or somebody who's just very independently wealthy. Because that's
But don't you think they should have to come up through the ranks a little bit, like serving on certain committees? I think that the allure to the mayor's position, having a higher rate of pay that would be considered maybe a part-time job, would mean you're gonna skip learning anything about council and you're just gonna try to go right to running the city with all that that entails.
And you know, I'm with you on that.
I know you are.
But, you know, we are at the pleasure of the voters. So we can't always have that.
Well, I mean, it's,
But I would agree with you, it's the only responsible thing to do.
right,
Is I think it'd be great for someone to spend time on planning and or council, HPRC, you know, all of these are very valuable, but we can't mandate that.
And I don't think it's a prerequisite. I think you could find an outside person that doesn't have involvement with the city that would make a fine there, but I
do
think
you
it's a
know one
good
right off the
training.
top of your head right now?
No, I'm just
Oh,
saying.
I'm
a
just saying,
business
I'm
person.
just saying.
Just saying a business person that's maybe at the end of their career or retired,
See,
that
and
could possibly
I-
make a good mayor. I'm just saying, it's not, it is a good training ground
I will say
to
this
be
other
a
thing,
council on
council looks like a
committees.
training ground for retirement. Let's be very clear
Yeah,
what this looks like right now.
uh,
I mean, there are a lot of people here that I think Chuck is one person that has to go to a job. Jimmy has to go to a job and I go to a job. But you make your own hours,
I do.
you make your own hours, retired, John's retired. Well, I mean, but do you flexible somewhat? No, do you have a 9 to 5?
I have 7 to 7.
Okay, my point is that what council has always, at least on my. When I've been on council, it's been a lot more retirees because of the ease of use of that. And so I'm just trying to not make it into something like that as well and make sure that. There are very few people that I know right now in this city that can go and sit in Chuck's spot and do as well as he's doing. And I want to be very clear that I just don't think,
Very kind words.
well, I mean, it's a hard,
There's a lot of
You,
job.
show up obligations.
So-
you don't want 2 people running for mayor, honestly. You want several,
Right,
and it should be that way.
right, you don't want to battle.
and,
Yeah.
and I'll say this, I noticed this right off the bat when I came on to council and noticed what the pay was for mayor versus council people. And I didn't know if Mike Hillman was making $4 an hour, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I'm sure he was making about 250 an
And he's
hour.
doing this on the side of running his own
Res-
business
Yeah, it's hard
where
work,
he has to survive.
and I don't know how Chuck's
And it's
doing it.
through a lot of dedication. I see a lot of that same dedication with
Mhm,
Chuck.
I agree.
So for us to sit and look at on the budget and look at what administrative staff should be making, you could look at council people and mayors in the same light.
Well, you know, I'm not
you
arguing
take-
that I don't think that the
Oh,
jobs have
no.
value, okay? I
Oh,
just want to
no.
make sure that you understand that I completely
Absolutely.
think they have
I'm not
value.
saying anything against anything you just said.
Okay,
And I wasn't trying to be conflicting on the training ground. I think it is good training
Yeah.
ground. But I think that you could possibly get an outside source that could be well versed. I think there's just a lot of different.
I don't say, that
variables
while I
there.
agree that this is good training, and I'm saying this is somebody who's the newest person on council, who doesn't, and like, I'm on HPRC, but I've learned a ton. Like, my learning curve has gone like this.
Mhm.
So I think trying to drop somebody into this would really suck for them. Like,
Yeah, I
It would really-
absolutely think there's a stepping stone and it's much advantage to going through.
It
the
is.
the
steps.
process. I will tell you that when I got on, it wasn't, the people weren't as helpful. Like, honestly, when I got on, I had a vote on the annexation of Floyd Hill that night. I had absolutely no idea what that all meant.
Wow.
So it was, I mean, I'm just
That's a
saying,
huge deal.
it was a very huge deal, and I will tell you how I voted. I voted for it, by the way. That's how I was right off the bat. But I mean, here's the deal. Like you said, we can't determine who's gonna run. I wanna make sure that it doesn't look like a part-time job to somebody that they don't have to do. I mean, it's one of the reasons that we created a different way that the treasurer position was
Yeah.
and the clerk position is that, to be very clear, you could be mayor and do absolutely nothing. And nobody can do anything about it. So,
And I don't wanna be a council, I'm not saying that we vote ourselves a raise every time you turn around like Congress or something like that, other politicians
I would
sometimes.
like a really great.
But I think there's nothing wrong with looking at that versus another township
sure,
every year.
Well,
And whether or not we wanna give ourselves a raise, we don't have to give ourselves. a
you
raise.
can actually have it as it goes to your seat, that the raise would only happen after
the election,
the election.
yes.
So that's what I would
That's-
suggest.
Yeah,
no matter what.
exactly.
So we
Absolutely.
wouldn't be voting for our seats
But I do
anyway.
think, and I'm telling you this, as somebody who's done volunteer work for years, I thought this was volunteer. I didn't know.
So did I.
I didn't know there was a stipend. I was like, what? There's a check? It was exciting. But it was, I'm like,
I thought
wow.
when they were asking for my social security number, they were gonna do a CBI check on me. I was like,
know.
oh, I've got
I
one
didn't
out there
realize
already.
was, like, money coming in. But I do think, when I look at what I put into this, I get the packet, I do the work, I do the research. And I think I'm not the only person that does that. Like, we all take a look, we look at the packets, and sometimes our packets are 150 pages long. There is more than just showing up for like today will be probably a 3-hour meeting. We also do a work session, and generally we do work sessions at least once, if not twice a month. Like, I think there's more to this than we, like in talking to people about, hey, are you interested in council? I'm very honest about the time commitment, because it's not just a maritime commitment. If you're gonna be on this and be a productive member of council, there is a time commitment for the council members as well.
There's also just that you're out in public in a small town and you put your name out there and your opinions are out there and people are not gonna like you because of what you're doing or what you're saying. And so there's also that impact. So it's an I mean,
That's
there's
very
places
true.
that I
That's
do not
true.
go simply because I do not want to engage in an argument about something that I believe in.
Okay, don't people stop you at the post office or at Safeway when you're in there shopping?
Sure, and I go in there
Right.
as incognito as I can. They still find me.
Well, and I will tell you, I absolutely engage these folks.
Of course you do. You
In
stand there
fact-
for,
That's worse.
You don't do that.
In
You don't go to the
fact,
Safeway unless you have an hour and a half.
I think a lot of you are of the mindset that, if everybody's happy with everything going on with the city of mission accomplished.
Sure.
But a lot of the folks that you need to talk to either don't understand something or, and it's entirely possible, they've got a great angle on something, and they want to talk to you about it. So there's where you can really make some progress. And anyways, I think that the council stipends haven't been adjusted in Lord knows how long. We're running officially 8+%. It's probably more like 10, particularly in Colorado. And I'm just recommending
When was the last time we had a raise?
at the election cycle, we increase the stipend at council 20% with the understanding that we are going to keep in mind the inflation rate moving forward. Because I think we all
20.
understand it may actually be more than 20% by the time it takes effect on the next election cycle.
20% for mayor though, I don't think that's.
No, and that's why I said, I was looking at some other municipalities and I feel that 18,000 is giving the citizens quite a bargain. But if we add the health insurance, we will be able to make it so that anyone with so much as a part-time job would be able to be our mayor. And I think anybody should be able to.
Well,
be
it would
That's cool.
open
I like
it
that.
up to more people, because it would actually be an income. And I love the healthcare, like I'm all for.
Well, and the healthcare was never such an issue as it is today. I can tell you, Bob Boland told me that there were decades past when they would have 10 or more people pick up packets. And that's very healthy. I
Yeah,
think we should have many people want to be here and may not just be 1 or 2 people running.
right, absolutely.
And can we support that with the study from other towns, just in case citizens
Yes.
asking
Sure.
about this?
Yeah, and I want you to know, I got this from the CML report of communities.
Yeah,
There are several communities now that are our size that provide healthcare for the mayor. 18,000 is not out of line. It's about what Breckenridge is. And I'm saying they don't even have to be, they're significantly under where we're at per person.
When you
And,
speak of the election cycle, you're talking about the next time.
yes, so 3 years from now, basically, about 3 years from now.
And that's generally how it should be done, that you shouldn't be voting on your salary, you should be voting on a future person's salary, I agree.
Exactly.
Or, I mean, even if it is you, Chuck, it should be
Well,
for
and
the next election.
And it may not. I mean, you think about the scandals and recall attempts and things that have happened in the city. It may not have anything to do with it. But I think that we can kind of get ahead of this because we're not in an election cycle right now.
No, I like
And-
that.
And we can get ahead of this. And also, I'm saying, keep in mind the inflationary component so that, if we run into, heaven forbid, that, we end up with double-digit inflation or something, we have already built that into the commitment.
Right,
I like the idea though, that by doing this, we can open this up to more people.
We
Because
should.
it becomes something that's more like a viable part-time job.
Right.
Mhm.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, you can absolutely on council or mayor, you can run into people that are just egomaniacs or someone that is just independently wealthy and not very in touch with folks in the city, but they have plenty of money for a campaign.
Mhm. I know people in the county like
Yeah.
Okay, miss.
that. I can say whatever I want, lady. And I shall.
So I'd just like for council to weigh in.
I think it's a great idea,
Yeah,
Chuck,
yeah,
absolutely,
that's-
absolutely.
I like the process of voting ahead too. I mean,
And
that's-
by the way, that's in Colorado, so it's regulations.
yeah,
Mhm. I thought it was. I didn't think we could actually vote up on a raise for yourself. I thought, plus I don't think I would feel good about doing that anyway,
No.
so I don't think anybody here would want
Right,
to do
and
that.
I do believe
No, I'm
that,
not-
that,
I would not be
comfortable
comfortable with
that is the spirit of the
Yeah.
regulation.
Right, you're saying anybody that goes before me. And a lot of people that I asked that to serve on boards are like, I just don't have the time. I have to work, and they'll make, you know, if they knew that like that there was a stipend for those hours that you were gonna put in, reading the packet on Sunday nights or whenever you read it, I think they would probably feel a little bit more like I can do this because it's gonna bring value to my life too, you know, monetary
I
value.
was like, this is, I didn't know, big position.
I had no idea.
No one said anything,
No,
no idea.
All right, well, if there isn't anything more, I'd like to move with what time we have with our project summary.
Okay, in your packet and in the previous packet, because we ran out of time, previously, thanks for coming, Gary.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Gary.
Glad to help.
We do this every year. It's just a listing of projects. The first group is the projects in progress, and that's the main one I want to focus on. And of course, as we start coming to council in the upcoming weeks on the budget request for 2023 and looking at the 5-year CIP, we'll be talking more about future projects. But I just wanted to recap or talk about mainly the projects that are in progress, just to keep you in the loop. Hose house number 2, restoration, that contract's been awarded. We got 3 good bids on this project. We were very excited because some of those are the bids have not come back so favorably. We also have a $25,000 request that's been given to the Historical Society that can be used to offset some of the city's costs for this project. So we've had several meetings on site to see some of the work that's already begun there. Masonry work is underway, and we're very excited. And a new roof will be put on before the bad weather really sets in, the cold weather sets in. So we're excited about that. Citizens Park restrooms rehabilitation. We've had a few setbacks with that project with supply chain issues, particularly with some of the fixtures. But that project is moving along. They were doing the electrical work when I last visited a few days ago, and that project's moving along. Public Works facility, we had our kickoff meeting with the contractor and JVA, and we are excited to see this project actually get started. We have an $800,000 in DOLA grants, 2 different DOLA grants, total of $800,000. At this meeting, I believe we're looking at starting construction in the spring. Is that correct, John? Okay. And that just seems most favorable because there's a big lead time with a pre-engineered building. And with the contract being awarded here, they can go ahead and order that pre-engineered building. And they say once they start construction in the spring, things will go very quickly once they have the pre-engineered building ordered. And that lead time will have to deal with the winter. So we're fine with that. And that will really help Public Works operations. Library park improvements. We've had some challenges with this, with the bids coming back very high. We are splitting the project out into 2 different projects. So we have done that. One for the landscaping, one for some of the building maintenance, building repair issues. And the Haynes are working on some modifications, such as doing artificial turf, which has been approved by the State Historic Trust. So they are okay with that. And we want to get this out to bid again this fall. And we're hoping that we can get some good bids on this. Maybe the 3rd time will be the charm. We're taking out some concrete. Hopefully that'll reduce the cost. There's a lot of concrete that was proposed in front of the hose house. We're taking that out, taking out the diagonal walkway or making that an ad alternate. So we're really trying to just get it down to the essence of a park. And so So hopefully this will be the charm, and we want to get the building repairs done, the pointing of the brick and some of the repairs at the lower entrance, get that also bid this fall. So that's underway. Downtown mobility hub and parking structure.
You skipped the police station.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Police,
Second
thank
class
you.
citizen over there.
We still have the plan of moving the police station into the current fire station.
Nice.
Once the fire authority builds on the new site there on 103, where the parking lot is. So they've had an engineering assessment done on that site. It looks feasible. They are moving forward with that. So I'm hoping they're in construction next year, the fire authority, but I don't know that for sure what their timing is. But that's still the plan to get the police station moved back closer to the downtown. They'll be on Colorado, which would be good, which is a better road than like Minor would be going through the historic downtown. And so they have easy access either direction and get them closer to the downtown.
Plus, couldn't you, wasn't the desire to maybe have guys that were working 12 hours be able to stay there? Aren't there places in there that they could do that
We
possibly?
do have the second floor. It's not ADA accessible, but for training purposes, as you know, having a few bunk beds up there, perhaps other city offices, we might have to put an elevator in, but there is that second floor space.
Possibility, yeah.
And
Fire
so-
authority's going on 103.
Yes, yep,
Okay, with the floodplain and all.
yep. They went through an engineering assessment, says that it is feasible. They just have to raise the building up a little bit. Does add to the cost, but it is feasible.
Well, they could-
And is the current fire station, how much renovation is that gonna take to make it workable for what the police station? Is there a lot involved with that?
The concept would be to build out one or two of the bays on the first level. That would be where the offices would be, where the public would come in. There'd be a public space, but also you'd have your offices there. The other bays could be used to store the police vehicles inside and secure, which
Which would be lovely.
would be lovely. You don't get that very often. And then you have the upstairs space. So we don't know a cost yet, but we have had some
Is that
preliminary
gonna be part of the
discussions. with architects.
design, like when they break it down, how we can best
Yes.
reuse,
Yeah.
recycle the building?
Yeah, and level of difficulty, I think it's pretty well suited for trying to remodel into that space.
I haven't been in there, so that's why I'm asking.
It's
I
it's
don't
big,
know.
yeah.
I mean,
It's a lot bigger than what they have,
Yes.
so, I love the idea of parking the cars.
Yep.
Inside.
And there's also the possibility, because of all of the vehicle bay space, that maybe some of the public works equipment could be stored in one or two of the bays as well. There might be that, I don't know, there might be enough room to do that, like the.
Chief's like, oh no, my friend, I'm taking it all.
He's got a new
Armrest
building
for that one.
brand new.
That's true. We're
Get
taking away all
buildings
of our
in right there.
storage space,
What storage? That one over there?
Yeah.
That's gone away?
the baseball field.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was wondering what was
We're
in there.
hoping to consolidate as much as possible.
I'd like to
but-
see what's in there.
But John's also let me know that it may be a challenge to get all of the storage consolidated down at the new public works site.
Gotcha.
So,
Meanwhile, Chief's like,
Lister.
Yeah,
but we're,
we'll let them deal with it. I think they can work it out amongst themselves.
Yeah. You've only got 2 minutes.
all right, I only have a few more minutes. We'll be talking more about the mobility hub and parking structure. I think the good news, CDOT committed more money.
Yeah, they found 1.9 more million.
this is
And
awesome.
this was out of a meeting with the mayor and me speaking with the director of
See that?
transit rail. And so that's huge. I don't think we'll get more from CDOT because their focus is on the mobility hub and the part of the parking structure that will be used for transit, those spaces that will be geared towards transit users. So and obviously we got to have a good part of that parking structure used for people visiting our downtown, visiting our city. So there'll be more. I don't want to get any more into that because we're just about out of time, but we'll have more discussions on that. We started design on Virginia Canyon Road and reconstruction, and we are applying for a $750,000 DOLA grant. That's a maximum for utilities to help us with that project.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
Yeah, but there's some big numbers, estimates on what that project will cost. We'll come back to you on that. Downtown Minor Street reconstruction project, that's certainly something out of the master plan that we'd like to get going, or at least elements of it. Water main replacement along Chicago Creek Road, we'll have more discussion with council in the budget process. But there's a lot of funding available from the through the state and through the feds right now for water and sewer projects as part of the infrastructure revitalization. So we want to access that, and the way you best access that is getting some of your design knocked out. So we've had some discussion about designing the replacement of the water main, the first phase going to our water plant, getting that design. So our recommendation is we move forward on that design.
Did we include like an alternate in case that one pipe falls on its face? I know I keep banging this drum, but
Yep. Redundancy,
it makes me nervous.
Well, we can certainly have more discussion about that. We definitely got to get the main one.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But if there's more money if there's something that we can have to like,
Yeah.
add to our safety level as far as protecting our water main.
Yep.
I'm all for
that. We talked about Virginia Canyon Mountain Park Phase 2. City Hall restrooms, we still would like to get those done because to meet ADA requirements. Restoring the windows and exterior of City Hall. I'm gonna stop there. There are a couple CDOT projects to finish the greenway through the city. So we'll have 4 miles of greenway through the whole length of the city completed by the end of next year.
Awesome.
Which is really cool. Yep. And I'm gonna stop there. But you can look through that if you have any questions, upcoming weeks with the budget process, let me know.
Thank you, Andy. Everybody, please take 5 for a comfort break, and we'll get rolling here around 7:05.
So it's still open, but it's.
Let's go take a
Alright,
look.
alright,
Let's get out of here.
Yes, I thought.
Yep.
Fire department.
Oh, we're all right.
I don't know, Candy.
I don't know. Hey, cheers.
What do you need, these guys or?
Yeah, these are guest on. Yes, I
Yeah,
have
warmer
one.
with all of your garb on.
Is it a new live action Pinocchio?
I did, I have not watched it. I just watched For Love and Thunder, because I helped out for it on
I heard it
streaming.
was a little.
Okay, so I actually love Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
I like Techie, and he's the way that he does things. So I'm not like, every time the goat screams, I laugh myself stupid.
I will definitely be into it for similar reasons.
Oh, it was hilarious.
I love corny stuff. It's the best.
It was, so Thor, like, if you, Thor can't.
Yeah.
See what's
What's
going on.
on?
Maybe, in the spreadsheet,
Yeah.
anything's possible.
I was appreciating being up 11,000.
Month to month,
See, that ought to be like 2.4.
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Oh, well, no big.
It is though.
Yeah. I just wonder why sometimes programs have like a mind of their own,
Seriously.
that's kind of a weird glitch going on.
Thanks for.
No, you bet.
Do this later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Man.
I'm just waiting for the council members. I'm gonna sit down and I think get up.
Not too bad, how about you?
Good.
Scott, I'm gonna steal your idea.
Yeah. So ice,
Excellent.
sparkling water.
You probably have one.
No.
Stop.
I like it.
Now, do we need to adjust our picture?
You're right. The new one of these can track when people talk.
How are you, Miss Hunter?
You're doing well?
Follows you, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yes, like I have to come back and talk to you guys about the water, because
Right.
I bill, and I said, oh,
I'm
I
watching
haven't
the
touched
water.
your water.
Why not?
I think my water bill for September got sent out before she got the closing docs for,
You're kidding me.
so.
So it's probably updated.
Yeah, this is a
Should
long-
we got tomorrow?
Oh, you know what, I didn't think about it, all over the system, no, I may not have to ask you guys.
No, I mean, in our system. you can call it.
It's just, like I have everything, I have to get all this stuff done by the 30th. And my life is nothing but deadlines right now.
She was doing really good the first 3 or 4
Once the
days.
30th happens, though, like,
I don't know what it was, but-
well, sort of, sort
I
of.
don't know if it's just other stuff.
One can hope, right?
Yeah.
How are you doing, my friend? That's good to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
See, he has the privilege of working from home, so he actually is up there with him. He doesn't go daily, but he goes like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's pretty daily, right?
Better.
But actually, he goes around 3 o'clock.
my God.
Usually he doesn't see anybody there.
I'm like the lone soldier down
You
here.
are. You can move closer, by the way, if you want to. Oh, sorry, Art.
I might.
You can move closer if you want to. I just take your name.
I made my name and my computer headed this direction.
But he, like, he only doesn't, when I went up there with him twice, we only saw the bikers, we didn't see any hikers. But I know my young neighbors. It is. And I don't have a problem with the entire thing, as long as it doesn't overflow. on the side. You know, and then with David,
Yeah.
we went to, I mean, and here I am talking about this, we go to South Pearl Farmers Market, which is the largest farmers market.
I'm like, oh,
Parking
I'm
and
myself.
no
Go ahead.
Every
That
Sunday, 9 to 1.
It's up to you guys.
Every Sunday night.
The regular council meeting for September 12th, 2022 here in the city of Idaho Springs. We'll call it adjourned at 7:05. Or, I'm sorry, convened at 7:05.
I was like, what?
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about that Bronco game already, you know? But roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Kate Collier.
Here.
Jim Clark. John Curtis. Art Cacavelli.
Here.
Scott Pennell.
Here.
Lisa Manifold.
Here.
All right, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. And we have an agenda before us today. Now I have a motion.
I'll move to approve the agenda for September 12th, 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And I'm sorry, I am remiss in my duties. With the agenda, I would like to make one slight modification. If you look under 9 on resolutions, B, It is ending resolution series 20, resolution 21, series 2022, with October 1st, 2021. Please make a note that that is October 1st, 2022, not 2021. And I'm sorry, may I have a motion for the amended, the agenda as amended?
I will motion to approve the agenda as amended.
All right, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. And do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes from August 22nd, 2022.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your right hand, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. We'll move to approval of the bills. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the bills to September 12th, 2022.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion on the bills? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Jim Clark. John Curtis. Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment tonight?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay. All right, we will move to our resolutions, and the first one is resolution number 20. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution number 20, series 2022, resolution setting the official dates for the celebration of holidays for the city in 2023.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, a first and a second, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Jim Clark. John Curtis. Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Okay, moving to resolution 21. Do I have a motion?
I will move to approve resolution 21, series 2022, a resolution declaring a vacancy to exist in a Ward 2 city council seat as of October 1, 2022.
Thank you, Lisa. And a second?
Second.
All right, Scott. Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Jim Clark. John Curtis. Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Moving to resolution number 22. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve resolution number 22, series 2022, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement concerning the administration of the 2022 Innovative Housing Planning Grant.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Art. Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here, I'm sorry, yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Jim Clark. John Curtis. Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
We have no ordinance first reading. We have no ordinance second reading. And moving to city attorney Carmen, I read this about the sales tax exemption on hygiene products. And for me, it seems like the thing to do, but wanted to hear what you had to say on this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor and Council. You are moving at lightning speed, so I will attempt to not slow this train down. You see my memo in the packet. As is addressed, it's a pretty straightforward issue for you tonight, Council. I would simply like your direction on, you see two options basically in the memo. There was a state law adopted that exempts for the state's sales tax certain hygiene products. Those are incontinence products and diapers and period products. The state law that authorizes this tax exemption at the state level requires local municipalities who similarly wish to exempt those products from local sales tax. The law requires us to affirmatively act to do that. The bill doesn't simply allow us to follow through inaction. So to be clear, the two options for you, Council, are to do nothing and allow the local city sales tax on those products to continue, and this would be effective as of January 1st of next year, 2023. Or if Mayor stated he thinks it's wise that you consider and discuss whether you would like to also have those products be similarly exempt from city sales tax as of January 1st of next year. If you would like that option, all I would need from you tonight, council, is a direction, a consensus to return an ordinance to you that does that. So that's the choice I'm asking you to make this evening.
Council, how do you feel?
That one,
All of the states.
yeah,
Protocol.
It does seem like the humane thing to do.
absolutely.
These are necessaries, like you can't.
It's ridiculous. You don't have a choice.
Art?
I agree with you guys, but at the same time, we're going to ask them to raise the sales tax 1% in November, and I just want to make sure we don't, how we present that. I don't disagree that we should do it, but we're gonna exempt, and I think the amount that we're gonna exempt is gonna be, I don't think that it's a big
Significant.
amount, to be honest with you. And then in November, we're gonna say, well, we want you to raise it 1%.
I think they're gonna,
And this is not on a ballot.
this is not, yeah.
No.
It's already past the state.
I understand it's not, no, what I'm saying is, I just don't like how it looks, that's all.
And I
don't
understand what,
disagree.
the sales tax you're talking about, people think that that's gonna be theirs. This is actually a sales tax that a local person pays
Yeah, right.
versus something that would be considered maybe a luxury item because visitors are coming in and buying stuff. I know you agree with me, I know.
do.
I just want, I'm trying to clarify it. So if anybody's watching and says, well, that doesn't make any sense, but it's for people who live here, like essentially for people who live here. So
All right,
I agree.
okay. So the general consensus is that we follow the state. Thank you, Carmen.
Got it. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Sure appreciate that. City Administrator, Andy, there's no request for action?
That's correct, Mayor.
All right. And Assistant City Administrator.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report with one request for action.
All right, and unfortunately, we did discuss this in work session. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve an application to CPW non-motorized trails grant program for the amount of not to exceed $250,000 for phase 2 of trails construction in Virginia Canyon Mountain Park.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Discussion, Andy?
One correction, that would be for phase 3.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
no.
Yeah, it says phase 2, but it would be for phase 3.
Thanks, Andy.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
I amend.
Kate, you're amending
Yep.
for phase
Phase
3? Okay. And we still have the same second for phase 3. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, a roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Jim Clark, John Curtis, Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Scott Pennell,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
All right. And Wonder, we have your report with no request for action.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report in front of you with no request for action. I do just want to add a little bit on why they moved the ballot box. So if the power goes out, our power goes out, we don't have on-site IT to bring up the camera that watches the ballot box, which is one of the main reasons they needed to move it over to the Collaborative Care Center, because they have 24-hour IT. And so that would never happen. The cameras would never go down. So that was the main reason that the county moved that. And it's been moved.
Yeah, I saw it.
And just a minor glitch, sales tax report came in, very good. We're up like $11,000 over our all-time record. But for some reason, there's a glitch and it was showing like up 30 some odd percent. And it actually it's like about 2.5%. So I just wanted to make you aware of that for some reason it was just populating that way.
But it's still going up. It's still, you know.
Exactly.
Even if it's just 2%, it's still climbing up.
Absolutely, yes. And nothing from community planner tonight. Chief, you have anything further to add?
No request for action.
Okay, I do want to make council aware that there was a terrific 9/11 memorial yesterday. Chief attended, and we had many first responders there, so it couldn't have gone better. I think it was a really good turnout. Public Works Department, John, you don't have any requests for action, but we did take a look at the paving situation up on Wall Street. And it doesn't appear that there'll be anything deficient in the future, at least glaringly. So is that correct?
That's correct.
So how are you planning to handle that if the residents of Wall Street report problems? Because as someone that lives on Wall Street, like I can tell you the water is I am consistently working to make sure that the water stays away, and
This project was never intended to correct any drainage. It was intended just to extend the life of the existing pavement.
but do you, I mean, I went and looked at it, like, that is a big gap. I worry that will, even though it's not intended to
If we
correct the
don't have
drainage.
that gap, then we're gonna have water going over the walls into the back of other yards on Virginia.
Virginia, I'm actually talking about the ditch that's closest on the north side to the retaining walls of the houses that are
I
on Wall
don't
Street.
think that that's gonna fill with ice and water.
I would want to poll the residents of Wall Street.
Well, we can make corrections should that end up, proving to be an issue. If it ends up being hydro mining or something.
Well, with the new fence on the top of Wall Street, it could very well be an issue.
Oh, I did see that, yeah.
So we'll see what the shadowing does to that incredibly difficult road to drive in the winter time.
Oh, I didn't even think about the shadow. Oh, God. That's not the greatest area, that hill,
No.
as far as the shadow. Yeah, that's something to watch then.
All right.
You will have to worry about it.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I'm also living in the shade.
Well, thank you, John, and we will monitor that. We'll see how this, this winter and the spring runoff.
I'll be letting you know,
affects it.
don't you worry. Don't you worry.
And
Oh, I have one other, does the city do a planned or a laid out progression of how they deal with weeds on city property, like close to the roads? Because the weeds seem like out of control this year, and it's not just on private property, but I'm seeing it on city. Do we just not have staff?
Where at?
All around Wall Street, along parts of Colorado,
Virginia,
Virginia.
they're like.
I don't know.
Unfortunately, I can have people spend all their time on weeds and nothing else. I mean, I only have 2 people,
Oh, you only have 2 people?
yes,
Oh, my gosh.
on the streets. And there's circumstances that most of the summer I've had 1. So unfortunately, we could use the public's help too. We do what we can with the weeds.
Oh, this is not necessarily an attack. It was just more, I wasn't sure, like I didn't know.
So there's been some complaints about weeds. I mean, I've had a few citizens bring it up with me. So where does the city responsibility take over and
That's
where does the homeowner?
Well, on your property, like on the
Right on the
homeowner's property.
sidewalks?
Doug just went down and did,
The sidewalk,
well, we don't have sidewalks on Wall Street, so.
but I mean, like
Some
a lot
easements.
of the sidewalk area, you see weeds in the cracks in the sidewalks.
I don't know, what I propose is that we get a lot more people in parks, because honestly, I can't say to a constituent that we don't have enough staff. I just can't. I can't justify not having enough staff. And so we've got to figure out a way that we can entice people to be in these departments. They're good jobs, they don't pay poorly. We've got to figure out why that is not being a desired.
I really think it's pay. We've had an opening for just months and months. And
I just saw a pop-up on our website for the first time last week, so it hasn't been visible. While it might have been in the newspaper, I didn't see it there either. It wasn't well known. And my other concern is that, I don't know, are we doing drug testing on all employees within the city? Does everybody get drug tested? Everybody gets annually drug tested?
No,
Just when you hire.
Just new hires. So do we know if the stipulation is that you have to not smoke pot to work in any department in the city, then annual drug testing for all employees should be mandatory. I mean, what you're doing is you're saying that anybody that's gonna come in and tell me the truth, I don't want them to work for me. But anything that my employees are doing right now that I don't know about is okay. And
Well, I don't think you have annual, I think you have random, like.
Well,
right,
random,
it's
that's
random.
fine, but you know what I mean, like once a year, expect that this is gonna happen. By the way, I am not pro drug testing. I am saying that I am actively trying to get people to come in and look for jobs with the city
Okay.
actively.
And I appreciate that, but I'll tell you, about 20 years of my life, I was always P tested because the Department of Transportation mandated it.
Sure, and I
And,
understand certain licenses.
And I just think if you're gonna have a CDL, for example, for the city, you're gonna have to be subject to.
I absolutely agree, but I will tell you that I've actually talked to many people in Denver over the weekend. I was down in Denver for a while. And what they are doing is they're actually asking it in a different way. They're not saying, do you smoke pot? They're saying, can you pass a drug test? And if I say I can pass a drug test, then I can pass a drug test.
So then we do a drug test and you don't pass it, then at that what point do we say, no, you can't pass that? I know of no municipality that allows any type of marijuana use, medical or.
I don't know that I don't know that that's true. I'm gonna tell you that-
I worked at the casinos also. The casino does a drug test, everybody passes it. The first time you get injured or in an accident,
Sure,
first thing they do is a drug test.
that's absolutely the way it is.
Then workman's
That's
comp
every,
says,
that's every
we're
job.
not paying that.
But that's every job. That's the
We're
library.
not paying that. So why should we be any different? Why should we,
But we don't have any
allow
employees,
people to
John. That's the problem.
why should we allow people to operate equipment and machinery
We're not
when
talking
there's
about every
actually-
single job.
when there's actually no, that I know of, government set, I don't know if you call it BAC for marijuana. or
Well,
not.
if we don't follow those rules, I think we open ourselves up to liability.
Absolutely.
I think we
I'm not-
absolutely do.
But then, do we know for a fact that none of our employees right now smoke pot?
All of my employees are subject to random tests.
When's the last time we did that?
We are in a pool with the county. So I think it was us, the last one that got tested.
And that's like any workplace, you don't know if someone is.
I've been drug tested, Scott. I truly do know. What I'm trying to do is make points that how are we gonna get people to
Yeah.
work in our city?
Same reason
We need to
Henderson Mine has a problem getting
Yeah.
their employees.
We need to figure out a way that.
It's the same reason that every municipality
So-
is short on people.
So I totally agree with Kate on, I think we just keep trying to get some kind of summer help to help John in the summertime. For parks and weed control, whatever. Next summer.
Next summer.
Next summer. We're a little late for this summer. I realize.
But I mean, John, my point is that we need to figure out a way that whether it's hiring a service so that we're not responsible for their drug background checks and all these other things that need to go on. But I cannot, it makes me feel very uncomfortable to tell citizens that we can't do it. Like, we're asking the citizens for a lot with all these
We can only
visitors.
do so much.
I know,
mean, you
John.
have to tell people, we do not have the people to do that. We're trying actively to get that. We have not yet.
By the way, Gilpin, I get the Gilpin paper, they have had a non-stop ad, and then the ad is in there every single week, months and months and
It's
months.
very, I will say that it's
Clifford County
difficult.
has the same thing.
It's difficult too, though, because pot is legal in Colorado, recreational pot is legal in Colorado,
Yeah.
just like alcohol is legal in Colorado. If you're a federal employee, I get it, like, I have federal employees in my family and they don't go near a pot shop or anybody else that's around it because they can't do it, but in the state of Colorado, it's legal. So when people say to me, because I've said to people too, hey, I know we could use some folks and,
They're like, yeah,
but they're like, oh, well, do they drug test? And I was like, I don't know, let me check. And we do. So it goes, like, it's at odds with the state law. So is that,
federal law, really. Yeah, I mean, our rules are, the whole thing's messed up. It really is.
And I think marijuana usage and the drug testing on marijuana might evolve into something different someday.
I think so too.
I think it
You
will.
know, we can't predict where
It's-
that's
I
gonna
mean-
go, but
Because as long as you're driving a car or operating machinery on your own, and you might be a casual pot smoker, it really is no different than, anything else you're doing.
No, but I think we look for the residents of Idaho Springs. Shall we open those up to lawsuits? Is somebody?
we don't
getting injured?
change anything
somebody
different that we
that's
do
injured by an
versus what
employee?
is a guideline outside of it. Right now. What it
And I
evolves
don't
to
know
in the
what that-
future, I mean, it could evolve into something totally different.
Absolutely.
It's entirely possible.
All right,
I think it
well, thank you, John. I just want to point out that we're going to have our next work session September 19th and the next regular meeting on September 26th. Art, I saw your hand was up.
Well, before you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to go back to those 2 days, sales tax. I'm sure that 2.5% is less than 2.5% when you take the cost of the goods and services that have gone up in this town. So it's not too hard because that had something to do with it.
I agree. I would say just inflationary alone would have, done more than
I
that.
mean, I think we're doing great, but it's not all.
No, it's a good point.
Total growth. Okay. I'm done.
And before we, I do have one thing under the mayor and council. You'll see in your packet that there is a petition against the SID. And we just want to be very, very open and forthright and included in the package tonight.
I'm gonna call you guys and ask you about it.
So a question, whether or not a petition would be valid or not, would the petition only be open to people in the SID or is it open to outside? I mean.
Well, this, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, is the same as I received a letter about a sound wall that we shared to council. We distributed in your packets, I don't know, about a month ago. And Mr. Dugan took the time to collect the signatures. And it was important to him that we received copies. So we're doing that. It's got, just to answer your question, I think it's pretty obvious from reading the names that there are both folks who own businesses and own properties in downtown, but then there are some other signatures on there that are not part of ownership of any kind of property. So it, for what it's worth, we did distribute it and we want to make sure council has a copy.
Is it needed to verify every name on that list? No, you don't have to.
Petitions in Colorado have statutory requirements. And this is a petition for sure, but it is different than a statutory petition.
Okay.
So that's why we've been treating it like public comment and making sure everyone's aware of
So
it.
that's what I was wondering, so it's not officially a statutory, as you say, petition.
Yeah.
Because statutory, I would think that everybody in the SID would be eligible to sign, and I think that's a lot of council's concern is those people, number one, I would think.
We heard tonight that there's additional funds from CDOT. We're working really hard, as we've always said we are, to reduce any potential impact of assessment on everyone. Nobody wants to create a bad thing for our businesses downtown.
Absolutely.
And so remembering and keeping in the forefront who this parking structure is primarily going to benefit. And I think that we've been trying to hold that balance over the last 18 months. And I think we've done a lot of work to try to make sure that we're not creating a bad situation for anyone. I think you'll hear more about this potentially in the next few weeks about some potential ideas we have to make sure that this is something that works for everyone in our community. But I think when we created the SID, it was based on a petition of property owners in the SID because they're the people that will most affect. And if we wanted to create a SID assessment, we would want to do something similar to show that a majority of property owners in the SID would support it the same way. Other people's opinions of this are very important. And I'm not saying that this is less important because it's not a statutory petition. It's just we still have some work to do to talk about how this is going to be funded. And we do want to make sure that the people who we put forward in this conversation are the people who would have to pay. And to your point, Kate, would be on the hook for that money if they had it. And so we want to make sure everybody's on the same page and we continue in that work.
I think some of these folks are just against the parking structure.
Yeah, that's a look at the way,
So I mean,
And I just-
that opens it up a little bit to what they have to say as far as their being against parking structure.
And I
Their
wanna,
opinion is important, but for the terms of assessing someone, I think one of the primary responsibilities of government is to make sure that if there is a tax or fee implemented by that government, that is A, adequate to pay for its needs, and B, in Colorado, agreed upon the people who are being assessed. And I think that this parking structure, from a community perspective, what it does is it allows the city of Idaho Springs to contextually manage the tourism demand traffic that we see from I-70 and keep them out of residential neighborhoods. And I think the other thing is that the SID assessment was intended to make sure that residents of the city don't pay for parking, which is primarily going to benefit downtown businesses. while also benefiting the city from sales tax. That's why we created the SID assessment in the first place. I think that the story of the parking structure for the community needs to be told and make sure that it's accurate. And I want to make sure that that story is accurate, that people understand that when this parking structure is built, one of the benefits will be people don't drive their campers down Wall Street because we'll be able to make sure that people go where they belong. One of the benefits of the parking structure will be is that our service and tourism economy will pay to support itself, and that these parking structures go to support that tourism and service economy, which in turn supports our sales tax, which provides infrastructure in the city of Idaho Springs. And so I think that it would be fair to make sure that that side of the argument is also heard when we do have this conversation about the parking structure.
Well, of course it should be, but they're concerned about the traffic and the additional costs that may be to the city for influx of all these cars and what have you. So I mean, I'm not saying that it outweighs what you just said, but I think it's a legitimate concern.
My concern is that those comments are based on nothing. We haven't said how much the parking structure is costing because we haven't entered into an engineering study of it. All of our cost estimates are based on really conservative contingencies where we are fairly confident that that parking structure is going to cost about $8 million. We have a really good contribution from CDOT, and we are very confident that city parking revenue can pay for a majority, if not the entire parking structure. So what I would say is that it's really important for our community to make sure that when they're considering this project and the benefits and the potential downfalls of it, that we base it on accurate information that isn't conjecture and hearsay. It's based on what actually is happening. Now, the mayor said all along that we're not building a parking structure at any cost in Idaho Springs. We're going to build it if it's financially feasible to do so. If it's not, I think that we know that you guys have a lot of experience looking at our finances at this point and what's good for our community, and that decision comes to you. So I think that at the end of the day, what we need to do is remember that this is a fact-based, we need to take a fact-based approach to this, and we need to make sure that we answer these concerns, which is why the petition is in your packet, and we make sure that this really fulfills the goals of our community as established in our comprehensive plan and all of the other community outreach work that's happened over the last 5 years here to make sure that it is representative of the goals of this place and a community asset that preserves residential quality of life into the future.
And I agree with you 100%, but that's not been communicated to these people, otherwise you
It
would have
has.
a petition.
And I can show recordings of that. We've had more public engagement on this project than any other project in the history of the city. We've been working on this for 18 months, and we've been working extensively with all of these property owners to make sure that it's very clear what we're talking about. And I think one of the things that we've done in the last 2 months is we did bring some of the work forward for the SID so we can establish the SID, but we haven't established a project yet, and we haven't established a SID assessment yet because of the concerns of the community related to making sure, A, that we take any other alternative source of funding that we can for this project, and not to be callous about it, but we have achieved almost $14 million worth of grant funding since I've been here. In my time here at the city, we have gotten CDOT to commit way more money to this project. We set up parking revenue and a structure that can pay for this in the future and can reduce the impacts on people. And so I think that the facts of what we've actually done and accomplished in this project are what we should be looking at. And I think that Mr. Dungan is concerned because he runs a business downtown that is popular, but he has a small business. And we need to look at impacts of how that affects everyone. We need to make sure that if we do put an assessment in place, it's fair. We may not even need to put an assessment in place. That's one of the other reasons why you haven't seen an ordinance about that yet. Is because if we can do this without doing an assessment and we can promote our businesses and we can preserve residential quality life at the same time, that's something that I think we'd want to do.
This is my point, John. All I'm saying is these people don't agree with you. What you say.
For whatever reason.
For whatever
That's fair.
reason, they don't
But
agree with you. That's all I'm
That there's
telling
specific language on this that they're signing, and I don't know that sometimes people read through this, or they just say, I'll collect your
Well,
signature, I don't agree
you.
with the
I was
project
at the coffee
sometimes.
shop when they were doing some of this. And I saw some guys that just,
Don't want the
they
project.
just signed it. They
Yeah.
didn't even read it. So
So
I'm just
that's,
telling you that, John, what you're saying is completely, I mean, I don't disagree, although I don't think your 8 million is gonna come in at 8 million, but they just don't agree. That's all. I'm
so
saying.
as council, we make educated decisions based on how this
What
is
John is-
presented.
yeah.
Yeah, and you're reading this correctly. I think that Some people just don't want the project, so they sign a piece of paper.
That's right.
So, but when we look at things, what are our responsibilities and who do we listen
That's
to
right.
and what?
I don't disagree, but I
Yeah.
just tell you what these people are thinking. I
Absolutely.
talked to a couple of them.
I don't mean to be disrespectful of them and their opinions either, because it's important. We
Yeah.
just haven't been able to bring a project yet, so I don't know how anybody could say it's a good project or a bad project. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is if we can have an opportunity to bring forward a project with a pro forma that shows how we pay for it, that would show how it lessens impacts on residents while also promoting our economic vitality in this community and resiliency and sustainability. I think that's the point where the decision can be made as a community about what's best for everyone. And, you know, it may not be a parking garage. I don't think that anybody wants to put that off the table. We don't want to irreversibly commit ourselves to a project like that if it's not appropriate.
Right.
And I think that all of the downtown business owners, and including Mr. Duncan, admit that we have a parking capacity problem in downtown Idaho Springs, that this parking structure could help. He's told me that personally. His largest concern relates to how we're paying for it and making sure we're not putting our anchor around either the businesses or the city. And I think we can answer that question.
I had a
And Jonathan,
I had a
I-
phone call with him some time ago, so I agree with you. He admits that we need parking, but he doesn't have an alternative. They don't have an alternative. They're gonna start off. That's all I'm saying.
And thank you, you're correct. That is exactly how he feels. We need a parking structure, but he flat told me he's against any assessment whatsoever against the building. Right.
I also think it's interesting, and not in a great way, that we see that the inability to police the homeless population. Like, how do we even know that? Like, we've got a transient population because we're right next to I-70.
We have buses coming into town.
Well,
I mean, that's what they're worried about.
but we're
but that
still gonna
won't-
have buses coming into town.
Well, I think they're worried that it's gonna create more mobility for people that they consider not.
I guess
That
there's
shouldn't
always
be there.
that possibility, but I mean,
I think you can't, I mean, just
we
like, you
can't
can't
say
dictate
that's gonna
that. That's,
happen.
well, you
and
can't.
there's a need for public transportation.
Transportation, yeah,
That's something that's we
absolutely,
need to progress on.
absolutely.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to
Electric
counter that,
vehicles, public transportation, that has to be improved.
it's kind of a conversation what John's saying is, the project's not even on the table. We're simply just trying to figure it out. I've said this before in council, I will say it once more, hopefully Larry's watching. I am not really for any sort of lien against a property because they simply cannot pay for what we're asking. So, and that is going back to the mayor's point, we're not gonna have a parking structure at any cost to anybody.
That's
So again, this is just a very inflammatory conversations that people are having outside of council that is, I mean, it's not productive. It's not getting anything done. And all it's doing is putting up roadblocks and confusing people, frankly, to sign a document that really, you're signing against something that is invisible. It is literally not in the air at this point in time. Nothing's there.
And Kate, if I may, because I say, if this came in wildly of expectations, $20 million or something, it's an easy decision.
Goodbye. Yeah.
No, we're not having
Yeah.
it, right? That's gonna be shelved.
And I've said this to multiple people.
But similarly, if we had a situation, I'm just making it up, where maybe we didn't even have that the parking structure itself could pay for itself, then similarly, that would be an easy
Sure.
decision.
I always close my conversations out with anyone that I speak to at Safeway or if they call my home is, you have to come to the meetings. And this petition's open. Come to the meetings, because that's how you get educated on what's going on and not
Sit
going on.
in the meetings
And
with us.
as you can see, the seats are always empty. So, to me, that's that's their responsibility as well. And I've said it.
These questions specifically spell out things that affect the people that are in the district. And then there's outside people
Lots
signing
of
it.
outside.
So I
Yeah.
agree with Art, it's just people signing that don't want the parking garage, that aren't directly affected. They're affected, I guess, because they're citizens in their neighboring community, but
Well,
it's just, how do we look at something like that? It's just, okay, got it, and
Well, there's people that don't even live anywhere near the downtown district in that list that it could see.
The other thing is, do we really realistically think that traffic is going to stop? Like, if you try to go downtown, I had to go downtown 2 weeks ago, and you try to go downtown and find a parking space because you're on your way from somewhere else. You need to allow yourself 15 minutes just to make sure you can find space.
Right, because they'll keep coming.
Yes, so like I think I understand that people don't want a parking garage, but I also look at where do you plan to put people? Because they have now discovered us. I don't think people are gonna go away, and we're only building, the mountain bike park, we're only building more attractions, they're gonna bring more people to this area. Where do we plan to put them?
I think it's council's responsibility, the change is a constant, there's no doubt about it. But how you regulate change and do it responsibly, I think that's council's role.
I agree. Well, I also think if we can put everybody into one spot versus having them disperse all over the city. Like, as somebody that lives in the city, I'd rather have everybody funneled to
Absolutely.
one.
I don't want transient visitors in neighborhoods.
Look at how much we complain about Sunnyside.
Yeah,
because
I
we
don't
want
think
people.
anybody wants that, and that's what is essentially gonna happen.
That's an issue in itself. I think,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing. I've been working on this project for a very long time and I am passionate about it. And I think I know quite a bit about what we're doing. But I want to say that I know I'm privileged because I get to put written words in front of you and make a recommendation. I'm not leaving Larry Duncan out of that process. He's going to be here and he's going to be present one way or the other. Bruce Boynton is going to be present in this process. Those people on that list, that's names. don't like
Anybody
it,
that wants to be there
I'll
can
be
be there.
there and we'll make it right. It's not going to be my word and nobody else's. And it's not just my word. It's all this work that we've done collectively. But it's very important to me that our community is represented, whether they can be sitting in a chair or not. And I'm going to make sure they are. I have built many relationships with the people whose names are against it on that list that I think that we can have really good conversations. It's something that I think that, it works pretty well for me in Idaho Springs. And I think that in the future, as we move this project forward, if there's going to be a recommendation, those people are going to be on that list, at least understanding where we're coming from and understanding the majority of what the decision is. I think we're actually not too far on some of these folks that are saying no. I think a lot of it just comes down to concern about small businesses versus big businesses and how we measure impact and how we make sure
Yeah,
people
I
don't
agree with
lose their
that.
businesses forever. We can answer those questions and we're working on it. And I promise that I will not make a recommendation to you unless I know that we're on the same page.
I think when they did this petition, John, I don't think it was aimed at you.
No.
Aimed at the city and the city council. So
Yeah.
I can see your passion, but I don't think you should take it.
No,
It's easy for me to say personal because I don't think it is. That's my opinion.
they're good people who are working hard for the city and they do a lot for the city. They provide a lot of the sales tax we use to build roads and things like that. And they live here and they're part of our team and we need to make sure that their voices are amplified. And I want to make sure that happens.
Andy?
One clarification, the petition was distributed at the dais. It was not in the packet. So.
Sure,
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Yes,
That's
and
what-
thank
that's how
you,
council
that is
received it.
correct, absolutely. Anything more tonight? Oh, yes, Andy.
I know it's getting late, but I think we also want a conversation and get some direction about filling this council vacancy. We declared the vacancy with the resolution.
Yes, we did.
But I think we also, our staff would like to just have some direction on how to proceed with that.
Right, so we're putting an ad out that we are looking for folks who would like or have expressed an interest to join council. And my understanding at that point, council will make an appointment after interviews as we had done in the past.
It's gonna be in the newspaper and on our website and on our Facebook page.
Yes.
I believe, yeah, all of that.
That
And
was
they
the
need
thought.
to, same
that's what I
similar
said,
process, they need to submit a letter of interest.
Yes.
Okay.
Cool.
And we'll set a deadline in a couple weeks or
Right.
something appropriate like that. So-
Sure.
Thank you for the reminder. That absolutely is something that we need to tackle with Lisa leaving. And anybody have
To the Denver football fans for extending it.
Carmen, do you have anything before we adjourn? Okay,
No, thank you, Mayor.
all right. Well, if nothing further, we'll call it adjourned at 7:46. Thank you.